You do want them to learn some of those basic skills in a fun environment that they will build upon for future good purposes.
Help me, Mama!
Hi everybody, this is Emily for Help Me Mama. Today I want to talk about, should I let my little boys wrestle? My answer to this question is yes! But before I get into the reasons, if you have not already, please share one of my videos and subscribe. So here we go. Why should boys wrestle? Yes or no? Are there stipulations to that? We're going to take care of all of that right here, right now. I think wrestling is natural for boys, and if you do not have sons or you do not have sons yet, you might not have experienced the need, that like really needfulness of boys to wrestle. You also might not know this if you have one boy and a bunch of girls. My brother was the youngest and he had 5 older sisters. He did not wrestle that much, but if he got together with boys, he would indeed wrestle. So sometimes that doesn't come out unless there are other boys or brothers around. I, like I said, come from a family of girls, but my uncles, my mom had 7 brothers, and the stories of that household are legendary. So I personally don't really think that you could stop brothers from wrestling, given the stories from my uncles. And there can be good wrestling and there can be bad wrestling. So I do want to cover some of my boundaries for that. I think wrestling can be good for boys, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the purpose. Why would you let your boys wrestle? Is it just so they can be angry, violent men that are part of the patriarchy and blah, blah, blah? No, there are good reasons for wrestling, and there are even good reasons to encourage your daughters to learn how to wrestle as well. So here we go. Things to consider when you allow your boys to wrestle. One is the mood. Right now my boys are 4.5 and almost 3, and they love to wrestle. They love it. They sometimes wake up first thing in the morning and they want to wrestle. But the mood at 7:30 a.m. is not a good one for wrestling because they haven't really woken up yet. They haven't gotten their bearings. Their self-control is not at the highest point yet. So the mood, you know, that cranky, just waking up, not a good time to wrestle. Overtired, just waking up, overexcited about something, you know, those are like sometimes they'll get like the second wind, they're overtired, but then they get the second wind of energy. Usually not a good time to wrestle, okay? So you have to redirect in that sort of instance where they can still play or get out some sort of energy or even calm down, and you know, something other than wrestling. So consider the mood, because that it's just going to play a part in your children's ability to wrestle with a proper attitude. So the next one is the setting. I think this is pretty obvious. If you are in a mall, you don't want your boys to be wrestling all over the floor. So they do need to know there are appropriate places to wrestle. My boys actually ask me, "Mom, can we wrestle now?" Which I think is a good thing for your little ones, at least, to ask. Can we wrestle now? Is this a good time? And they want to all the time. But if we're in the grocery store, no, that is not a good time to wrestle. At great grandma's house with all the delicate figurines, no, not a good time to wrestle, okay? So the setting, consider also if you're say if you have a bunch of boys over, maybe you have 2 boys and there's other 2 boys, they might all want to wrestle. But if you have 2 boys and then you have 2 friends that are girls come over to play with them, they're not going to want to wrestle, most likely. They might, but then again, it could be inappropriate. So consider the setting. The next one is the attitude of wrestling. This is a really important one. I do not allow my boys to wrestle if they are not wrestling with love. And I'll give you an example of this, because this anecdote for me just totally confirmed what I have been starting to discover about male bonding and male love. I had Owen and Ryland over here. It was so cute. They were in their little tent, those little play tents, and I thought that Ryland was talking to his little stuffed animal that he loves. He was saying, I love you. I love you so much. I tackle you and I love you. And he said it just like that, his little not even 3-year-old self. He was so exuberant in his love. And I thought, I wonder who he's talking to. I said, Rai, who are you talking to? He said, Owen, I love him so much. But what were they doing? How was that love being expressed? In wrestling, okay? So it's very true. There can be wrestling in anger and there can be wrestling in love. And the wrestling in love is just so cute. They love to wrestle each other. They love each other when they punch each other. They love each other when they drag each other to the ground and roll over. I mean, I've seen nonstop giggling for a half an hour of rolling on the ground, giggling, laughing, punching, smiling, happy, loving wrestling. And it's a wonderful thing. So it has to be an attitude of love. And if it starts, because you know how it is, it starts off all fun and games, and then somebody does actually get really hurt or somewhat hurt, and then all goes down, right? So every once in a while I check in. If I see things starting to go downhill, say I'm here in the kitchen, things are starting to go downhill with the wrestling, I'll say, excuse me, can you check your attitude? Are you wrestling in love? And then they check their attitude. Oh yeah, I'm wrestling with love. Or I've also trained them, it takes a while, and it's kind of a long while, but I think it's worth it. I have trained them to, if somebody gets hurt, you ask them, are you okay? Do you need a hug? And most of the time now, if somebody gets hurt, there's before I even have to say anything, the other one is saying, are you okay, brother? Do you need a hug? And then it totally resolves itself and they continue fighting. And sometimes that might happen 3 or 4 times. If it happens 3 or 4 times to the same person that's getting hurt in a row, I'll have whoever's doing the hurting, I'll ask them to check, you know what, you've done that a couple times. It's really hurt them a couple of times. Do you think it would be wise to do it again? No. Or you maybe need to teach your brother how to defend himself or something like that. So there's just techniques. If they're not able to talk to you and stop and look at you while they're wrestling, it's become too intense. So they do have to be able to still respect your authority and obey when they're wrestling. If it becomes too intense, I would say that's a mood shift where the wrestling needs to stop. If it's too focused and they're not paying attention to you anymore, things need to separate and cool down, things like that. But I would just train them. If they are wrestling in love, they should be able to respect the other person. If someone says, stop please, you stop. If somebody says, ouch, you show concern for them. If somebody keeps getting stuck in the same sort of deal, you might want to teach them what you're doing. Okay, so it's sort of a learning thing, and that's sort of the attitude. This is friendly wrestling. This is wrestling with love. If you can't do it with love, you're not allowed to do it. The last one is purpose. What would be the purpose of toddlers wrestling? And I was just talking to Owen. He's 4.5, like I said. And I'm just now starting to sort of instruct them on why is it good to learn how to fight? Why is that a good thing? Is it a good thing? A lot of people would say no, it's not really a good thing for boys to learn how to be dominant and aggressive and fight. But there is a good purpose in it. One, I do think it builds self-confidence for boys if they're able to wrestle and be aggressive and not angry aggressive. I don't think that builds positive self-confidence, but I think it does build self-confidence to be able to play and keep up with the boys and be strong in a positive way, not in an angry, lashing out, trying to get revenge type of way. That's not positive. So self-confidence is one, but the bigger one is to be able to defend the helpless. And that's what I was talking about with Owen the other day. If you are a man, just as I would say having babies is the female superpower, that extra bone density, muscle strength, it is the male superpower, okay? And as much as you might want to deny those physical differences, they are there. Men don't have women's superpower. Women don't have male superpower, okay? So that God-given extra strength, extra density, extra aggressiveness, that is all a gift from God, and it is given for a purpose. And it is given, I would say, primarily to protect your family and protect the weak and powerless, those who are unable to protect themselves. So I'll give you sort of two examples. An old friend once told me that he got into a fight. This was not a good fight. This was a bad fight in high school. And this guy was way bigger than he was. And he thought, for sure, I'm going to get pummeled into the ground. Well, when he eventually had the fight with this guy, after one punch, he realized this guy, he doesn't have any brothers. He's never fought before in his life. And he was not able to get a single blow on him. And so because he had wrestled, this old friend of mine, because he had wrestled as a kid, he was able to at least defend himself. Now, this guy, this was a bad fight. So he won, and he probably pummeled the guy. And this was BC, okay? This story was BC. But he was able at least to defend himself because he had wrestled and played and punched with his brothers as a kid. So one is to be able to defend yourself. Now, number two, if you're in a situation like that, but you're not trying to defend your own honor, you're trying to defend somebody else, you need to have those basic skills. So God forbid your sons should be in a situation where they need to defend themselves or someone who is less strong, less powerful, less mindful than they are, their own families one day, your grandchildren one day. You want them to, one, have the confidence, and two, have the ability to take somebody down. And that's not for pride, that is not for ego, that is not for pure violence or aggression, that is to protect what is valuable. So, in answer to the question, should I let my boys wrestle? I would say definitely yes, but do it with purpose. Make sure you check their attitude. Make sure you check the setting and are mindful of that, and also know the mood of your children, just so that they're not you don't want them to wrestle in sin. You don't want them to enter into violence and aggression and needless anger, okay? You don't want them to act in anger, but you do want them to learn some of those basic skills in a fun environment that they will build upon for future good purposes, for protection of themselves, protection of the helpless, to have the self-confidence to be able to stand up for someone when they need to.
Help me, Mama.